when you go into these roles as an intern or as someone coming out of university, it's almost like those are the things that you dream of. Now you've got set piece analysts, coach analysts, technical analysts, tactical analysts, recruitment analysts, data analysts. When you had lost 5 or 6 on the bounce and you were going to Norwich away and on a Tuesday night, getting back at 3 a.m, and then it's like, oh well, we've got to go play top of the league again on Saturday away, and it was just like, I think I was a lot shyer to say things, especially at the start. Especially with the coaches, some coaches that you're working with, that you're like, well, if I lose 3 more games, I'm gone. So then it's like, how can I really get to the real key bits of detail within everything that we've got and give that to a player or a coach? And then that leads into how we can then affect their behaviour. You'd have like maybe 1 day off a month. We're doing something like 70 or 80 hours like a week. It's elite sport. And you don't get to the Premier League and don't get jobs in the Premier League without having that trade-off of having to work unbelievably hard.
Hello and welcome back to the Chris Gill podcast, and today's guest is Tom Corden. So Tom is currently a lecturer in performance analysis at the University of Worcester, and before that he actually spent 7 years working as an analyst for Nottingham Forest. So Tom actually worked all the way up through the club, from intern to under 18s analyst, head of academy analysis, and then eventually first team analyst. So really interesting journey from Tom. He talks about some of his experiences in those different roles, and then about the transition moving from working within the club setting to the education setting. So before we get into the conversation, quick one just to ask you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And if you do find value from this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation with Tom Corden. Tom, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Yes, very good, mate. Yeah, really good. Really pleased to be here. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the reason obviously wanted to get you on, Tom, was I think your career to date and a lot of experiences you've had are obviously very relevant to the people that kind of watch and listen to this channel, and that goes from obviously your internship, kind of moving up to a paid role, progressing through the club, doing a master's as well, and now being involved in that education side of things. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, it should make for a good conversation. So let's see how it goes. So for those that don't know who you are, Tom, I'll pass it straight over to you. So just give a quick intro, who you are and what you're currently doing.
So Tom Corden. At the minute, currently I'm sort of a lecturer in performance analysis at the University of Worcester. And before that, in terms of, if you go right back in terms of undergrad degree, did a sports coaching degree at Leeds Met, we're now Leeds Beckett. Sort of did that in my final year there. Started coming down as a voluntary analyst for Nottingham Forest. Sent me CV out to everyone, and Forest were the only one that come back to me. So I was just driving down there sort of once a week on a Sunday to film games, etc. Seemed to like what I did, and then end up getting a full-time internship with their under 18s. And then within a few months, sort of moved up into the head of academy analysis, left, and got thrown in massively at the deep end with it, really. It's some ways good, some ways bad, but got sort of the head of academy analysis role, was there for a couple of years, and then moved up to the first team, and had 4 really good years with the first team at Nottingham Forest, obviously helping them get promoted to the Premier League, and then having that experience of being sort of a Premier League analyst, if you like, for a year and a bit. And then last October, left the club for my current role now at the University of Worcester, sort of teaching the next crop of analysts, if you like. So yeah, that's almost a whistle-stop tour of me.
Perfect. So just from what you said there and on your profile, kind of touching on maybe, don't know if you quite made 7, but about around 7 years at Forest, so obviously a long time there. And you mentioned the promotion to the Premier League, which was done in the best way possible, I suppose, the playoff, wasn't it? So how was that, Tom? Was that a good experience?
Yeah, that was a strange experience, because it was, a lot of people thought you'd be really nervous going into the game. And I remember going into the game not actually feeling that nervous, because we'd almost done so much prep for it. Almost was like, I know what the game's going to. You almost felt like you knew what the game was going to be inside out, because you've done so much prep for the game on this one game and gone into so much detail. I thought I'd feel really nervous going into it, but actually I was quite calm and thinking, no, I know what the plan is. I know what they're. And the game itself, first half, I can remember bits and sort of doing the halftime organizer and going down. Second half seemed like the longest 45 minutes, being 1-0 up, saying the longest 45 minutes in the world. Can't really remember anything that happened. But an unbelievable day, and then obviously celebrating with family and friends. And that's why you sort of, when you go into these roles as an intern or as someone coming out of university, it's almost like those are the things that you dream of. In terms of, those are the ones that the reasons why you want to go and do it. Really, they're the ones that you think, oh, imagine if I could win at Wembley and things like that. So yeah, that it will be a day that will live long in the memory. Yeah, so an unbelievable day at the office.
Nice, perfect. So let's go all the way back then, because you mentioned your sports coaching degree, Tom. So I think the degree I did was more of it was kind of split between the people that were doing analysis at the time. Either came from like a sports science degree or like you've done obviously the sports coaching. So did that include much analysis, that actual course, and where did the trigger come from for you to? Because you could have gone on and been a coach. So why did you do the route you did really?
Yeah, interestingly, in terms of when I first went into the sports coaching, I always thought I'd be a PE teacher. Or that was the initial thought of being a sports coach. And then in that first year, I went into a few primary schools around the Leeds and Bradford area, and I thought, no, this isn't for me. And so then in the second year, we did like a analysis and acquisition of skill module, which wasn't so much performance analysts analysis stuff. I think we're doing something in golf a little bit more of a biomechanics module. But I really enjoyed the analysis side of it and thought, look, I've always been really interested in football and know a lot about it. So I thought, actually, I'm going to have a look at this. And it was starting to be an area that was starting to pick up a little bit of speed back then, even more so now, I suppose. So yeah, then I started, like I said, while I was on that sort of coaching side, was doing a bit of coaching, with cricket coaching actually at the time over at Headingley in Yorkshire. So I was still doing a bit of coaching and things like that. But then we started doing some analysis stuff with that, just simple stuff like using the iPads and doing a bit of video feedback like there and then with the players, and really got my juices flowing a little bit. And sort of like, that's what I really enjoyed and really like started to think, actually, yeah, this is something that I could really see myself doing, rather than the sort of the hands-on coaching side of things. So yeah, I say in between going into my third year, I must have fired out that summer so many CVs to different clubs of like little part-time internships. There was funny enough, I got one of the sports coaches at the time, my lecturers was doing running like an American program for a lot of American students that come over to the university, stayed in Leeds, and run a bit, and he got me to do a little bit of analysis work with them. So it sort of got me involved, got me a little bit of introduction to it, very, very basic and simple. But I thought, right, yeah, let's really give this a go. So fired my CV out to loads, got sent back from loads in terms of that. But Forest luckily gave me a shot. And yeah, then I just started sort of going down the route from there. But yeah, it's an interesting one in terms of, I suppose we might get into this, where it sits in terms of that sports coaching, sports science sort of discipline. It's funny, on our course at the minute at Worcester, we have the opportunity, so we'll run a module, a second and third year module, which you can choose to do it from both the sport exercise science course and the sports coaching course. So we have a mixture of the two. So it's not just like we teach on a sports coaching or a sport and exercise science. It's like they both come in and they can both do analysis, which is an interesting, is that interesting point of like, where does it sit? Is it coaching? Is it sport and exercise science? But yeah, so for me, it was always from the sort of that coaching background that really interested me.
Yeah, I think another kind of important thing you said as well, Tom, was like, because when you go into uni, you're obviously very young. You don't know, like you said there, you went to be a PE teacher, and it's about kind of exposing yourself to different things, because you've gone on a career that you didn't really, well, I presume you didn't really know existed when you signed up for uni. So it's kind of just shows you what's out there when you kind of go looking and kind of put yourself in those situations. So that's a really interesting thing to say, I think. So you mentioned about firing the CVs out. I did exactly the same. So like that's the thing, just ping out to every club and see what you can get. So obviously Forest were the one that kind of gave you that opportunity to. So was that, like you say, it was with the academy first? Was it just like Sunday morning filming the young ones? Is that kind of what that was?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So I'd go down on a Sunday, film a game for an hour and a half. It'd take me longer to drive down and back up the M1 from from Leeds to Nottingham than it would actually while I was there filming the games. But loved doing that at the start, and then it sort of probably from September to January, and then January onwards, they obviously saw I was, again, just asking questions, really interested in it. Can I do a little bit more? Sort of being a little bit quite proactive with it, and just sort of asking, look, is there anything else you need my help with? Can I do anything for you? So then, obviously, with at university's not really having lectures on a Wednesday, I was like, right, well, I'm free Wednesdays, and I started coming down on a Wednesday as well, and doing a little bit of actual analysis and coding and goals, very simplistic goals databasing of like the under 10s to 12s. But I was getting a bit of exposure to not just doing the filming, which I loved. So I'd stay there pretty much all afternoon. So I'd rock up at maybe 1 o'clock on a Wednesday and stay till like 9 o'clock, because they'd have a under 14s, 13s game in the evening. They have games every evening at that level. Yeah. So I'd come for like midday, sort of do a bit of the coding and a bit of work around the office and get to know a few of the other members of staff, and then film the game and I got some exposure to live coding games and things like that. So yeah, that was almost, it started off just filming, but through being a little bit proactive with it, it sort of changed and moved into a little bit of, okay, well, actually, we'll give you a little bit of exposure to doing a bit of work. And then that's when I really got the benefits out of it, rather than just rocking up and filming the game. So
yeah, that kind of proactiveness is what I was going to mention next, Tom, in terms of like advice for people that are going into these internships. What would you say? And that's kind of touches on it there in terms of be proactive and kind of ask for more, and like use it as an opportunity to try and learn as much as you can while you're in that situation. Because I think when I did mine, obviously I was proactive, but then looking back, I probably could have been more. And even little things like, when you kind of go in and you're meeting other interns at other clubs, like exchanging contact details and kind of, because the chances are you're probably going to bump into them again later on in your career. So just little things like that, trying to get as much out of it. I don't know if you have any more kind of advice for.
Yeah, it's probably two or three bits that sort of that being proactive, because I think this has changed slightly in terms of for when we always felt that as staff at Forest, in terms of the balance seems to be shifting a little bit in terms of with interns, that where when I was intern, I'd be like, right, what can I do? Can I do more? Like, just give me, I don't care what it is. Don't care what the work is. And then, I remember one of the sports science staff at Forest saying that the first one of the full-time interns come in and started questioning, do I have to do that? Do I have to do that? And it's like, well, yeah. And that's where I think there's a little bit of a shift now, where it's like, well, actually, like, the club isn't doing you a favor as an intern. Like, you're there to get that experience, and they like, if they'll always help you if you ask. Yeah. Don't be afraid to like ask questions, be a sponge in terms of information, just listen. Like, sometimes you don't need to talk and sort of go into all these meetings, but just listen and absorb all this information, because you're working with some really experienced people. And then the other one, so we had our intensive week last week for our master students who have been out since sort of July, start pre-season on their internships, and they were coming in and talking, and I was guilty for this at times. And I think especially as a new intern, it's don't sort of judge yourself against others, because they're at very different points of their journey to where you are. You're working with maybe some members of staff that have been working there for 10 years and are very experienced analysts, and it's like, I can't do that. I was like, well, you're 3 months into your internship. You're at very different stages of your journey than they are. So it's almost, don't go in expecting that you should be doing this at the level that these guys that you're learning off are doing it. It's like, well, they understand that you're an intern. Like, don't put too much pressure on yourselves to be head of the academy analysis or head of the first team analysis within a year. Like, just almost realize where you are on your journey, and if you can ask questions, be proactive, like take on all this information. You've got some like experts in your field that you share an office with, and at times you don't realize that until you're not sharing an office with them. And you think, I can't just go across the table and go, oh, by the way, I've done this. How can I take this a bit further? So yeah, they would probably be a couple of just quick.
Yeah, no, definitely good points. And then just on kind of, while we're on the topic of internships, I think the kind of taboo subject in the industry, which has changed probably a lot since maybe when we did it, but obviously in unpaid work and stuff like that. So I'm presuming you started off unpaid, Tom. Was that totally just going? Yeah. So technically, you were like me. You were losing money because you said you're driving down an hour or something to get there. So what's your thoughts on that? And like I say, I think it is changing, but there's still unpaid work out there, and I mean, my opinion is that there is always a space for that, but obviously there's always going to be teams that kind of push it too far and kind of take advantage. But I'm just curious to get your thoughts on kind of the whole unpaid situation.
Yeah, it's like you say, it's an interesting one because we've done it and I came out on the right side of it.
Mm.
Like, and I get it's totally changed, and it should change in terms of when we're saying, even if so, the master students that we have, we really fight for them when we go in and talk to the club, saying, "Look, do you want to give us an internship? So we'll give you a student." It's almost like we're giving you a student, maybe a software license. So we're giving you a person. Like, the least you can do is pay for their master's degree.
Yeah.
So look, it's not ideal, and you've got a lot of other jobs and industries around the world where, like I say, these interns are getting full-time pay. But I think especially within football and analysis, there's no governing body to be able to sort of fight your corner, to be able to go, actually, no, they should be getting paid this much, which I think is where, unlike maybe other disciplines who have sort of these governing bodies that look after, that's where analysis, I think, is weak in that sense. There's no sort of a underlying body that sort of looks out for analysts in that sense. But yeah, I'd hope that we can really get away from the total unpaid internships. Like I say, even if it's just a little bit here and there. But like you said, I've been in the other side of it, where working in clubs where they're trying to beg, steal, and borrow for any penny that they can, which is equally frustrating. But like you say, they'll try and keep the costs down, which I think that's the really frustrating part. They'll go spend 30 grand a week on a player that's not playing and never going to play, but then they will refuse to pay a student $9 grand tuition fee for a year.
Yeah.
So it's that's I think that's where it becomes the frustrating part, especially from my side, where I'm like, well, you're not asking for much, and these students aren't asking for much, and some of them are producing some real high quality work. And you tend to find now a lot, if you look at in terms of, especially from our course, a lot of the guys that have gone on to masters are now in full-time work.
Yeah.
So they're good enough. Like they're good enough, and they're going to go on and get paid. So yeah, I don't think we should. I think gone are the ages where, like me, silly me, was traveling down and not getting paid for it. But even when I started as a full-time intern, it was like 150 quid a month.
Yeah.
Which was like, and luckily, if I didn't, my auntie lived half an hour away for the Forest training ground. If she didn't live there, I wouldn't have been able to take that.
Yeah.
I was able to bunk in with her. I wouldn't have been able to afford to live and things like that. But like I say, I think it goes back to that being no sort of governing body or sort of for analysts out there.
Yeah, and it is a shame because, like you said, there, like you wouldn't have been able to do that role if you couldn't stop your aunties, for example. People aren't in the positions where they can work for free. Like, they literally can't afford to do it, so they won't get them opportunities. So, that's a shame. I think we've also got to rely on like the analysts now that are in those positions, although they can't maybe get the budget from the club to pay. Like, say if they can't, they can still understand where the intern is at that point, and they've probably been in that situation themselves as well. So it's like I know you're not getting paid, so I'm going to try and pay you in other ways, in terms of I'm going to let you come and we'll do this and I'll teach you how to do this. So then I know then at least I've done my job as a kind of educator and kind of leading you on to your next position. Because at the end of the day, if a club aren't going to pay, they're not really going to get the best people, are they? Like, really, like you said there, you've got people that are doing the masters and then they're moving on to clubs that are willing to basically pay for their skills because they're worth money at the end of the day. So, I think, some clubs will always be, look, we'll just take an intern and they'll leave, and then we'll just take another intern and we'll leave. But I think you've got to take it what it is, in terms of, if you're in that situation, try and get paid in other ways, and just know that you're taking from the club as well, in terms of you're boosting your own career, and you can move on and make the best of it to get the next position. So yeah, always a hot topic of the conversation. So because I think the whole the masters thing, that didn't really happen as much when when we were. I think I'm a bit older than you, Tom, potentially, but in terms of that wasn't a thing where you would do a masters and kind of get a placement at a club, or at least not as much as it is now. So that's kind of definitely been a change we've seen.
Yeah, I think because the role and in terms of you're looking at jobs, rather than when probably we started, it was like you were a performance analyst and a club had 2-3 performance analysts. Now you've got set piece analysts, coach analysts, technical analysts, tactical analysts, recruitment analysts, data analysts. Like, the market and the job spec has gone through the roof. Individual analysts and things like that, they're getting really, really specific and quite niche. So the roles and jobs are out there now, so the demand for university courses has gone up. So now you're finding that there's still not loads of universities out there that are doing it. But in terms of, obviously, you've got ourselves. I've got to try and not forget everyone now. So ourselves, Loughborough, sort of Chichester, Middlesex, Cardiff Met. There's like loads of Derby. There's loads of unis out there that now are offering. I think even Leeds Met now have started one recently in the last couple of years, which again wasn't there when I was there. So I think you're finding more opportunities now, and especially the courses that like us, we're not a traditional masters in a sense where pretty much everyone on the course is in a full-time internship, and we'll see them for 2 weeks in the year at the university, and everything else is online. So we in the evenings. So I'm sort of teaching tonight 7 till 9. So it means that they can actually go and be full-time analysts within the year, but also getting that master's degree alongside it and fitting around their job. Whereas rather than saying, oh well, you can go and have the year there, but we've got to take you every Wednesday and every Thursday, and then the club are like, well, we've got now for we've not got our under 14s or under 15s analysts for 2 days when we've got 3 games. So yeah, I think there's a lot more opportunities out there for masters courses, and hopefully it just keeps growing, really.
Yeah, definitely. So let's get onto the kind of the progression through the club then, Tom, that you had. So it's like you almost did like the perfect thing in terms of getting to the internship, moved. So then it was like the under 18s analyst, head of academy analyst, and then obviously the first team. So because a friend of mine, Jordan, who's now at Newcastle, he did exactly the same thing at Brighton. So when I was at Brighton, he joined as the academy intern, and then he did exactly the same, kind of moved up. And I think obviously this is not to take anything away from the skills that you had. Obviously you were doing a good job, but I just wanted to talk about a little bit on the amount of potentially how much luck plays in that as well, in terms of, like you mentioned earlier, like someone moves on, so then that opens a path for you, because you could be in a role where you're there and the person is not going to move and you're kind of blocked almost, so you then have to move on. So yeah, just kind of riff on that a little bit if you can.
Yeah, like you say, I think, and a lot of the time I think the luck side sometimes links in with the proactive side of things. Like if you're like, yes, you need, and I needed that luck in terms of Stu Heppinsall he went from Forest to Derby's 23s to be that and I needed that. Equally, I needed one of the first team analysts to leave to open up a spot. But in terms of, and I say this a lot of the time, there's a lot of people that they wouldn't have just given that job to, because if you are really proactive within it, thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to be proactive, and then when that opportunity comes, because you've done those things and been proactive and you built those relationships, they're actually like, well, we don't need to find anyone else, we've got someone right here. Whereas like if you're like, oh well, I'll do this, I'll do that, then a job comes up, and then you start getting a hump on why we've not been given it, and some of them come out. So it's like, it's like anything, sometimes you've got to be a bit lucky. Even like players are like that, in terms of someone's got an injury and they've gone in and taken the chance, and then they've not looked back. Like the Marcus Rashford one was always the famous one of that, where they were trying to ship him out on loan to Crewe. They had a load of first team strikers get injured, so they said, oh well, sorry, we can't let him go out there now. Then he went and scored in, I think, Europa League on a Thursday night, and then went and scored the league on the Saturday, and then was in the first team for the rest of the season. So he's gone from on loan to Crewe, but again, you take your chance when you get it. But like you say, I think I've spoken to this with a few people, because there's a few people that I've spoken to in the industry that have moved from, or probably spend a couple of years at a club and then move to another one. I was like, I think there's the pros and cons of being at the same club for a long time. You build those relationships, you know how the process works, you get quite nicely settled. But then you maybe miss out on that sort of networking and working with lots of different people and it's like, oh well, then if they get a job somewhere else, oh well, I work with him at this club, he's really, really good. So it's like there's pros and cons to both, in terms of just being at the same club and working through, but then equally there's that settled part of it, that I really liked. And like I say, you had to be proactive to then get the jobs. It's almost like you weren't just giving them just because you were there at times, hopefully. Hopefully not, anyway.
No, definitely. No, and that wasn't me saying you've been lucky, Tom, by the way.
No.
You know, just kind of saying that does play a part, but then on exactly what you said, you've got to kind of be in those positions and make make the club aware that you're there and you can do that job that's just been opened up. They don't need to kind of bring anyone else in. So I hope you're enjoying the video so far, but I have a really quick interruption for anybody with an interest in video analysis. So if that's you, please do click the link down below the video for In Play Online. So just to give a quick overview, because I think it'll be relevant to a lot of people that are watching this particular video. So In Play Online is a cloud-based video analysis software. So it allows you to tag your videos, and when you've done your tagging, that includes adding labels, adding comments, adding notes and voice notes even, and you can even illustrate and draw over your clip. So if you are an aspiring analyst looking for your job and you want to create a portfolio of work, if you're a scout looking to make your kind of reports a little bit better and more animated, if you're a coach looking to get into analysis a little bit more, then this tool will be great for you because it starts at just £15 a month. So once you've done your analysis, you can add all the clips to different playlists, which can be downloaded and exported offline. You can put them into presentations and also share them to different people within your team. So it comes with a whole bunch of other features, but I'll let you click the link down below if you are interested. As I say, packages start at just £15 a month, so it's a very affordable solution if you are looking for something to help with your video analysis. So that's it for the interruption. Let's get back to the video. So in terms of like from academy to first team, was first team always your goal, Tom? So just from my perspective, when I was an analyst, like I always wanted to be first team, and to me, like the academy side of things was just something that I thought that I just need to do this for long enough to then get. But I know some people prefer working in the academy, and obviously it's a different type of role. So what was your thoughts? Was it always just a case of I'm going to do this, but then I am going to work my way up because I do want to be first team? Was that the case for you?
Yeah, I think I always knew I wanted to be a first team analyst at some point. I love working. I did really love working in the academy and working on that real development side, but being very competitive myself, I was like, in terms of, and like when I went back to saying in terms of the Wembley stuff, when I was at university and when I was like thinking, okay, I really want to go and be an analyst, the moment you dream of winning at Wembley with the first team or winning trophies and things like that, it's not, or for me, it wasn't helping players develop. Like that wasn't the ultimate goal. Loved it.
Yeah.
And like you say, I've met a lot of people that have done what, like you say, you think it's traditional route, work in the academy. The good thing about that is you get a lot of exposure and a lot more autonomy to make mistakes, to learn how things work and how processes work, which you need to. Again, I'll go back on to the internship. Some people think, oh, it's great, I've got an internship at a first team role. But I was like, well, actually, you won't be exposed to that much because the first team guys that are there full time will be trusted with most of the stuff, and you won't be. Whereas if you go with a 9-16 role, you'll probably be on your own, leading, knowing how to build those relationships with coaches, having that sort of chance to run it yourself, which is so important for when you then get to the first team. But I digress. But yeah, no, and I know people that have done the academy role, like you said, gone up to a first team and gone, actually, no, this is too, almost not too full on, but it's too cutthroat and too
different job, isn't it? It is a different role altogether.
It's a totally different beast in terms of that. And then they've gone back to academy and gone, actually, no, where my area of expertise lies is helping people develop. Like you say, there's been some unbelievable analysts who have been, like say, are so much better suited to working in academy football because of they can make things they're really creative. They can make things like sort of come to life, and they're developing players, and they're really happy with that. And I like to say, for their skill set, academy football is absolutely perfect. But for me, I always want to be in that first team role, and when it comes in, I'm like, right, I'll snap your hand off. I'm going up there.
Yeah, well, I mean, Wembley's better than the back pitch at the training ground, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, we're going to touch more on the first team role, Tom. But whilst you were head of the academy analysis, is that when you did your master's degree?
Yeah. So that was a fun year.
So I wanted to ask you why did you choose to do the masters in the first place? Obviously, you kind of, because some would see it, you kind of already got the job, you're already in the role almost. I know you're not the first team at that level, but you kind of your career seems to be going well. Did you feel you need the masters to get that next step up? Just why did you do it at that point?
Yeah, I think you were looking. I think at the time you were looking at a lot of sort of job specs and things, and there was a lot more that were saying desirably and things, we want you to have a master's in the industry, and there was also a little bit of part of me that was like, well, I'm getting as a head of academy analysis, I'm getting interns we're getting interns in that were doing masters.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, like, you probably shouldn't have thought of this, but like, well, if they're getting the masters as
Yeah.
a
No, I know what you
intern, and
mean.
I'm sort of running it, I was like, I need to keep sharp. I need to I need to keep learning and keep doing these things and sort of keep improving. So I was like, right, okay, I'll do it. A lot of people that were working full time did it part time, did it over 2 years.
Yeah.
I sort of went, well, I don't know what's going to change in the next 2 years. So I said, right, I'm just going to have a year of, yeah, it's going to be hard and it's going to be time consuming to do both. But I know I'm getting myself into, I'm just going to knuckle down, head down, and have a year where it's very full on, which it was. But yeah, and I'm so glad I did do it because again, it's given me again little things. You build a relationship with it's John and Mike who were running it at the time, and now I'm working with them both.
Yeah.
So you build those relationships with them. But yeah, it was a tough year. For anyone that is doing it, I always tell people you've actually got a little bit more time than you think. You always think you really rush with time, but actually you spend a lot of time where you're just doing nothing. Really.
Yeah.
Like, so actually you have got more time than you think if you're really clever with your time management and prepare, like you say, when your assignments are from the start of the course, all the way from September all the way till the next September when we handed our dissertation. It's like when these things are in, and you probably know when your busy pinch points are going to be at the club.
Yeah.
So like just as long as you can manage your time, then you should be fine.
Did that work the same way as it does now in terms of, did you do an intensive week and then you were at the club? So in terms of then how many, so you were working full time obviously at the club at that point. So then how many hours a week would you say that you were putting into your masters on an average week, just so people can maybe see how much of a...
Yeah, so it was so we had the intensive weeks where in September, January, and we had one in June as well, which we don't do now. But that week was Monday to Friday, 9 till 6:30, full on, and then we would have on a Monday and Thursday evening we'd have a lecture 7 till 9 in the evening. So sort of, and then obviously all the added work of probably every 3 weeks or so we'd have an assignment. So it wasn't where like an undergrad where you'd have 2 or 3 assignments at the end of like just before or after Christmas, and then you'd have a load more in the summer. It was always just gradually spread out throughout the whole year. So yeah, it was a lot. Luckily at the time I was living with Stu Heppenstall, who's I think he's now sort of women's analyst at head of the FA. But we were living together and we were both doing the masters at the same time. So we were sort of being able to help each other out and sort of watch it with each other, and so that was nice. And was having 2 people that were both working. He was at Derby at the time, both working in the field and both going through the same stuff that we were living together. So so it was nice to have someone that was also going through it at the same time to speak to and bounce off. So, but no, it was a tough year, but it was one of them worth it in the end.
Worth it, definitely. So, because you were at that point, say, head of academy analysis. So, were you, when you are, and this might differ between different clubs, but were you head, but still kind of, did you take a lead on, say, the 21s or the 8? Like, did you have a team that you would focus on more, or were you just overseeing and delegating between, different analysts, basically?
No, so I was head, and then I was at one point I was doing 23s and 18s,
right?
And head of. Which was just unmanageable a lot of the time. Like I say, I think that role should now definitely be a specific head of admin role, and then you have a 23s analyst and an 18s analyst. Like, whereas the time it was head of, and I was doing all of the work a 23s analyst would do. Also helping out a lot of the 18s at the time. So it was. Yeah, it was very full on. But like I say, now I think as an optimal, like I say, if I was putting it together, you'd put a head of analysis who would, like you say, oversee everything, and work out in terms of all the almost like the businessy side of things and the admin side of who's working where and everything, sorting out interns and then just let the 23s analyst or the 18s analyst be an analyst and sort of do their day-to-day jobs, if you like. But no, at the time I was spinning a lot of plates, should we say. Yeah,
because that actually leads to another interesting point in terms of, like, if you were to have the role as that more of a management, like that's a different role. Like, if you wanted to, if you were really big on doing the analysis yourself, like once you get to that role, you might find yourself doing less of what you like doing and more of, sending, like say, managing budgets and stuff like that. People might be like, oh God, I don't want to do this. So it's about kind of balancing. Obviously, every club will be different and every role will be different. But as you kind of move into these different positions, you will be given different tasks, and you'll find that you like some and you don't like some. So it's about finding that balance. Okay, so if you've made it this far into the video, you must be enjoying the content. Either that or you have simply fallen asleep. So whichever one of them it is, you probably won't mind me asking you for a quick favour. So as you know, I'm always looking to grow the channel. So the bigger the channel gets, the more people we can reach and impact, but also the bigger and better guests we can invite onto the channel to have these types of chats. So with that in mind, if you haven't already done so, I would very much appreciate it if you did hit the subscribe button down below the video. The stats are showing around 25% of viewers are subscribed. So there's a big chunk of you that are watching the videos, but you haven't yet hit the subscribe button, but I will let you off because you can do it right now. It's free and it literally takes 1 second. So if you go down, click the subscribe button, it would mean a lot to the channel and help the channel to grow. So that's all for now. Let's get back to the video. We will jump back to the first team then, Tom. So before you got that job as obviously from head of academy to first team, had you done any first team at the club? Were you helping out at all, or was it just a case of that was the first time you were kind of moving up properly?
Yeah, no, that was sort of first exposure. It was nothing really before that. They needed someone. It was the third, so yeah, it was September, early September.
Yeah.
Got called into the academy manager's office on the Thursday, and they were like, right, the first team needs you up with them. You're going Swansea away on Saturday. I was like, oh, right, okay. first one, I'm going Swansea away. I was like, brilliant. So yeah, I was like, right, I had plans on the Saturday. I was like, right, they're getting cancelled.
Yeah.
Done. Not doing that. So yeah, and then it was right. You off to Swansea. Got the bus to Swansea on the Friday, and then I was just up with them. Sort of ever since. And at the time there was only two of us, me and Josh Coomber, and yeah, just learned very quickly. Sort of learned very quickly on the job. And Josh was like, right, well, this is what we need you to do. Crack on, and like you say, I think it's one of them. Learn very quickly, and you got to adapt very quickly. And there's a big sort of that learning curve is very very steep at the start. But it's like anything. Once you can show that you've got the trust of sort of head of analysis, some of the coaches, then it's like they'll just sort of go, yeah, fine, we know what you're doing, crack on, almost. But yeah, it was like you say, again, steep learning curve at the start of just changing things. But I suppose for me, I'd almost gone from doing a full-time masters, full-time head of the department, full-time 23s, to then going, right, now you've just got one team to deal with, and going a lot more in detail and specific into certain areas of that one team. Was like, now I think because I'd had that manic year beforehand of just spinning a load of plates and having to manage my time well, it set me in really good stead for then going up to this first team role and going, right, not is this all I've got to do, but in terms of actual workload, I was like, right, okay, I can do this, and I can really do a really good job at it, and really sort of take a lot of care in what I'm doing. And then throughout the time, you get more jobs and more jobs and more jobs, and then it's like, all right, we're back to this again. But yeah, so I think that year beforehand set me in really good stead just to sort of go straight into it and smash it.
So how did you split that at the time then with, you said it was Josh at the time, so how did you split with Josh? Because I know some people might do, one does pre-match, one does post, like one does this, one does that. Did you just chip in together, or did you have set roles? And
yeah, so Josh would pretty much do a lot of the sort of opposition, like the opposition analysis and things like that. I would do more in terms of like individuals. So I would do like pre and post match individuals, if you like. So I would almost do opposition players, videos of opposition players and lineups and things like that we thought they were going to play, send it out to the lads, do all of our lads individual clips from games and get them out to them, sort of databasing and things like that, whereas Josh was more pre-post match things. I was filming training and doing bits like that as well. So yeah, they were sort of my main start roles, where Josh would almost do like the meeting side of it, where I was almost like, right, do the filming, the training, and then sort of doing individual clips for players, both pre and post match, if you like.
So who was the manager at the time when you moved to the first team?
Lamucci, yeah, Sabri Lamucci. So he had his own. He had his own analyst in Carlos, who was sort of that hybrid of
Yeah.
coaching a bit, and he would help Josh with the pre-match. He would go and do opposition scouting and things like that, and he would help Josh with the pre-match meetings. Basically, they would sit down together and run that, and that was his main role, really doing like pre-match opposition scouting and sort of the pre-match meetings where we were more. Josh was like do the pre-match and the post-match stuff, and obviously me and Josh would be the only two that would go to games. Carlos wouldn't come to games; he would go. He would go to the next opposition. He would almost go to the next opposition game, sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then in terms of then maybe the biggest changes from academy to first team, and maybe something that surprised you from that move as well, Tom, if there was anything in terms of the different job roles and responsibilities.
Um, there wasn't. I think because I had it, I almost had a built-up idea in my head of what the first team was going to be like. It was obviously a lot more. I think I was a lot shyer to say things, especially at the start,
Yeah.
especially with the coaches, and I think especially with me and foreign coaches in terms of that language barrier. I think that was a big thing for me at the start. Is I've gone from working in an academy with pretty much all English players. There's I say a couple of foreign lads, all English sort of. Yeah, at the time it was pretty much all English academy manager, 23s to 18s coach, and everyone. To then going in with a lot of players that English wasn't their first language, members of staff that English wasn't their first language, and having to sort of think, okay, well, how am I gonna best communicate
Yeah.
ways around that, and almost took a bit more of a back seat with things to start with, especially to start with, and go, okay, well, again, being a bit of a sponge. So it's not. I mean, at this time, I've been in the analysis for 3 years, and I'm still going into there and going right. Let's learn how the environment works. Let's be a bit of a sponge and sort of just at the start take in what the environment is like. It's a lot more like win at all costs in terms of very competitive. It's all about winning football matches. People's jobs are on the line, whereas the academy, you've got people that have been there for 15 years and they're never going to really in that much threat of losing the job.
Yeah.
But you've got some coaches that you're working with that you're like, well, if I lose 3 more games, I'm gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So having to deal with that sort of the psychological side of it in terms of there's a lot of people whose livelihoods are on the line here. So I need to make sure I can help them out and deliver. So I think, yeah, that was the main sort of differences in terms of that communication side of things, of how do I get messages across, and equally just that psychological change of if we lose, it's a real big deal. It's not about developing, and it was. I'm not saying the academy was, oh well, we've lost, oh it's fine.
Yeah.
It wasn't. You've got to try and develop them to get to that stage. Be that sort of especially the 23s, be that transition period of like it does matter that about winning.
Yeah.
But it was all about winning in terms of that first team environment.
Yeah, I think people that have never maybe worked in that environment probably don't realize like the whole environment and like if you've lost 4 games on the spin, like it's just so different in the office than if you've won, unbeaten in 10, and you when at that point you kind of feel like nothing can go wrong. Like you're winning, it's like, oh, this is amazing, like this is. But then everything just changes when it is like say every manager pretty much now is 3-4 defeats away from being under pressure from losing the job, and then if they lose the job, you might lose the job because they might bring someone else in and you're no longer needed. So there's a big considerations.
Yeah, those environments can get quite toxic quite quickly. And I've seen it in terms of when you're losing games, everyone's got ideas. So it seems to be when you're losing games, every player, every physio, every sports scientist, they've got ideas on how we can. Everyone's got, oh, we should be doing this. I can't believe we haven't done it. And you get little Chinese whispers going around, and it just becomes a bit of a, like you say, it's a bit of a toxic place at times. But like equally, when and this is what I've said to people in terms of when I've left now and gone into this education role, it's like a lot more of my days will sort of be that mid ground. Whereas when I was in football analysis, I was like, I'd have days up here, like your Wembley days, and when you're going well, but then equally you'd have days right down there when you had lost 5 or 6 on the bounce and you're going to Norwich away and on a Tuesday night, getting back at 3 in the morning, and then it's like, oh well, we've got to go play top of league again on Saturday away, and it was just like, right, just a slog. So yeah, it's interesting. It's a very different environment to a lot to anything else that a lot of people will work in.
Yeah, I think sometimes as well, it's easy to kind of not take it in as well. Like, what I mean by that is, like, when you're on there on a match day, you're there and there's 30, 40,000 fans that are coming. It's their highlight of the week, and you're literally living that as your job. Like, you go in there. Sometimes you take it for granted a little bit, don't you? In terms of, like, yeah, this is my job, but you don't realise what it means to so many people as well. Which is, again, it adds to that pressure, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, I definitely felt that working at Forest towards the two sort of the playoff, the year we got promoted. I felt it
Mm.
in a good way, and then that first year when we had that ridiculous 8 goal swing on the last game of the season, and we didn't make we were in the playoffs the whole year. Um, and then obviously COVID hit. We come back. We didn't do very well after COVID, and it's like, well, we need it's like we definitely need the playoffs. We had Barnsley away, who were like going for relegation, and
Mm.
we had Stoke at home last two. And we needed a point out of
Mm.
those two games. Lost in the last minute, 1-0 to Barnsley, and
Mm.
then the last game, Swansea needed to win by 4 goals. We need to lose by 4, or it needs to be like an 8 goal swing, and it happened.
Wow,
Um,
yeah.
and we lost out in the end. I remember just going home and just being up all night
Yeah.
thinking, and that was the first time where I was like, you've not, and not you've let the city down and think,
Mm.
but there was a real sense of like, because that was the first year I think Forest fans had really started to feel a proper connection with the club again and thinking, yeah, we can do this, we can get back to the Premier League, and that was that first stepping stone where the club were like, yeah, we can do it, and I think that whole season, like something was building, and then to just in such dramatic circumstances be taken away, it was like there was a real desire to go. Actually, no, next year we need to improve. We need to sort of get these fans
Yeah.
back on our back, especially with such passionate fans that Forest have got. They're
It's a massive club, yeah, definitely.
oh, they won't believe. Not that I've ever been a Forest fan, but like they'll always be my second team now. In terms of when I go back there, it's like it's just an amazing place to watch football. The City Ground it's amazing.
Who is your team, by the way, Tom? Who was your team for Forest?
My football team, Grimsby Town.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me before. Yeah,
Yeah, for my sins, I'm a Grimsby Town fan. So I've as someone that's seen a lot of hardships in football and how football can crush your dreams. As a Grimsby Town fan, I definitely know that.
no. So yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, Tom. But
A lot of people are.
I wanted to ask you as well about as an analyst when you're in that role. What's pre-season like? So let's say, and when does that start for you as an analyst? Obviously, is you've been grafting so hard throughout the season, you've not really had any time to take a breath. You get this like 5, 6 or whatever, how many weeks off where you obviously that's your holiday because you've not really had it during the season. But when do you start planning for the next season? Do you do that before you break up? Like, would you do that? Would you come in much earlier before the players and the other staff? Like, how does it look from an analyst perspective?
Yeah, so there was a times where we would start thinking about the next season at that March international break. So,
Okay.
so you get to that last international break in March
Mm.
of say the current season. That's when we really start thinking about next season.
Mm.
Some years were easier than others. When we were doing well under Coops, it was easy to do that because we knew it was going to be there next season. There's a lot of times at Forest where we get to March and we'd be like, no idea whether the manager's going to be here at the start of next season or not, which made it difficult to plan too far ahead.
Mm.
But yeah, pre-season again, it's a strange one for. We always used to joke in terms of the sports scientists used to cry a lot in pre-season because they'd finally have to do a little bit of work and actually stay back until about 6 because people were doing double sessions. So not slope off early at 2 o'clock every day. But yeah, for us it was all about learning.
Yeah.
It's when it almost transformed into that back into that development part pre-season as an analyst because obviously you've not got competitive games, you have got pre-season games, but you're not doing opposition analysis. You maybe do. I think we used to do on the last pre-season game. We'd almost do it as a tester run for. We'd do an opposition analysis, and we'd get them back into that almost mentality of preparing for a game, doing a proper pre-match, and everything like that. But it went more into that development stage. It's like right, especially when we had a lot of new managers in pre-season. It was right. This is how we want to play, and it's all about us building those. And we'd have sort of what we call inset days, where like today we're doing building out from the back. So here's a meeting. Us maybe last season, what we did, how we want to play. This is all. It's always all about how we want to play, and development and learning. Same with individual players, setting sort of targets and going, right, well, this is what we want you to really build on, and this is what we think you've been doing in pre-season. Load of individual meetings. So yeah, pre-season took a slightly different form because it probably went back into more of that player development, team development sort of model rather than win. It's all about, okay, it's more about a lot more about the performances. Not that it wasn't about performances in the season, but it was a lot more, how can we get the team where we want them to get and develop them and show them best practice videos and things like that, and really nail down our principles of how we want to play, so that we're ready. So when we come to that first game of the season, look, it's never going to be perfect right at the start of the season, but you're giving yourself the best possible chance and as many learning opportunities for the players to take on that information.
Yeah. Nice. One thing I want to ask you about, Tom, was I think you did a talk about, and the title was "Maximize the Minimum, Minimize the Maximum," if I said that correctly. So if you can, just what was that? Was that around a kind of analysis provision at a club? Is that right? Like what was it?
A little bit. So I did a talk at the Soccer Science conference, and it was all about sort of using their softwares and using Match Tracker in particular that they have. And it was a little bit more on the sort of a lot of the data side of things. But it does apply to processes. So yeah, minimize. What was it? I can't even remember it. Maximize the minimum and minimize the maximum. So it was almost like, well, at different levels. So at different levels at clubs, if you're at a non-league, like we say, this intern, got some interns, we've got like interns at Kidderminster Harriers and things like that. So you've got minimum to work with in terms of probably softwares, data, like providers, equipment and things like that. So in your role, you have to sort of maximize the minimum. So with your little resources, how can you maximize what you've got in terms of how can you best sort of order what you've like and sort of, what's the word? Order and prioritize. That's the one. Prioritize in terms of what you've got. But then equally at the other end, your Man City, your Premier League clubs, you've got so much stuff. So then it's always about minimizing the maximum. So it was quite a nice way of putting it. I heard it before at another talk, and I thought, yeah, I really like that. And it was about, okay, well, we've got so much data now. We've got so much insights and data and equipment. I can't then go to a coach or a player and go, right, here's everything. And it will just blow the mind. So then it's about, how can I really get to the real key bits of detail within everything that we've got and give that to a player or a coach? And then that leads into how we can then affect their behaviour. So it's all about, let's say, Steve Rance brought this in at Forest, probably one of the best analysts that I've worked with, about affecting behaviours. And it's all right having these amazing spreadsheets and amazing data sets and amazing sort of fancy PowerPoints, everything like that. Well, if we can't, as an analyst, we can't affect players' behaviour, coaches' behaviour, key stakeholder, director of football's behaviour, and what's the point? What's the point of having all this great data and this great information and fancy looking slides and it looks really cool and nice if we can't affect how people are behaving on the pitch? Whether that's sort of before the game, live during the game, in terms of at half time. That's what we're trying to do. Like, I'm not making a halftime organizer with clips on just so we can show the players something at halftime to watch on the TV. We're doing it because we want to affect their behaviour to go out in the second half and win the game. So that's what it was all about. And they just both fitted in quite nicely in terms of ways of how you can actually make the most of what you've got, or sort of break down what you've got to be able to go and affect people and affect players and coaches on the pitch.
That was an interesting point about, obviously, the clubs lower down have much different resources, because like the first team role at Kidderminster will be so different to the first team role at Man City, so it's just a different thing altogether. So that's probably why you don't see many people jump that, like they will build their way up, because they need to learn about all the different things. But yeah, that's interesting. And you mentioned Steve Rance there, so it kind of leads on, because I think Steve's obviously very, very good analyst, well respected in the industry. He's almost kind of going down the coach analyst role, from what it seems like, more of a and yes. I think that's kind of a change we're seeing in general as well. There are more clubs now advertising for coach analysts, and the role of the analyst from what you did maybe 5-10 years ago and what I did is different to what it is now slightly. So yeah, just want to get your thoughts on that role in particular, Tom. And obviously you come from a coaching background in terms of your degree, so how did that affect your experiences?
Yeah, it's a really interesting role, this coach analyst role now, in terms of finding a balance between having to do your analyst work, because you'll tend to find that a lot of this sort of coach analyst role is now almost what people are coming in as head of analysis.
Yeah.
So you tend to find that a lot of the people will come in as coach analysts with a manager. So
Yeah.
it's almost like they sit on the coach. They sit on the coaching staff, but they're also head of analysis.
Yeah.
And it's finding that balance, from what I've seen, of actually being out on the grass, then also being able to do your pre-match work, do all the work that the coaches expect you to deliver to them, but also being out there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and help with the coaching stuff. I think there's a lot. It's not as much coach; it's still a lot more analyst. But I think they can have like say, they're starting to have a lot more say on coaching sessions, on maybe not the actual coaching. Sometimes we've got people do it that the coach analysts will do opposition. So it's like, okay, well, I've been watching the opposition. This is how they will set up, and it's almost like them just, rather than just going through the meeting room, go through the meeting room, and then they'll come out on the pitch and say, look, this is what they're going to do. This is how they're going to build up. This is how they're going to press. So it just gives it another layer of information and detail. I think you'll find a few more set piece coach analysts now, because I think we sometimes found Axel, who was our brilliant set piece analyst, so much detail into there, and then it was, I think, always the frustration, the challenge was then the set piece time out on the grass and actually practicing it. Again, Axel he'd gone through the plan in terms of the coaches and go, right, well, this is what they do. This is what their setups are, attacking and defending. This is how we should set up according to that. This is how we can exploit them. But then sometimes they were getting lost in translation going out onto the pitch. So it's like, okay, well, could you have a set piece coach analyst that does the set piece, and then he goes out on a Friday or Thursday and goes, right, again, this is how they set up. This is what I want you to do. So I think it's a really interesting role. And I think it's going to be an interesting one of finding that balance of, I think it's still going to be a lot more analyst rather than coach. And I think it's finding that balance of being able to, with any hybrid role, being able to do both. Because ideally you want to be out on every training session, and the manager probably wants you to be out on more training sessions to see how they're playing and see if they're doing it right. But equally, you've still got to do your job in terms of your main job, which is your analyst work and your pre-match and post-match and everything like that, which, like I say, takes a lot of time. I think sometimes what I felt, coaches saw the end product and didn't realise how long it actually takes to get to see the end product of a meeting or a telestrated clip. But you don't see how long it actually takes to get to that process. For that 3-4 minute video, it's a lot of hours work.
Yeah, definitely. I think one other thing I want to ask you about, we touched on it a little bit, Tom, but in terms of like work-life balance as first team analyst, and obviously I don't know if that was a factor in terms of you moving on, which we're going to obviously come to your role at Worcester, that you're at the moment. But I'm just curious to ask kind of what your work-life balance was like as the first team analyst. Like, which days did you get off? I know that sometimes depends on if you win or lose as well. But how intense was that during the Premier League season?
Yeah, very intense in a word. Yeah, it was. I'd say there was some. There was 1 year in the championship. The championship was worse than the Premier League because you got more games. Got more games. And I think there was the year after we come back from COVID. I think Chris Hughton was the manager, and we had something like 13 or 14 midweek games that season. So we just had so many weeks where it was Saturday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and it was just, you'd have like maybe 1 day off a month. I think I'd track my hours, and it was we're doing something like 70 or 80 hours like a week, and it was just like, it was so much. It was just so much. The Premier League was interesting because we started to get a bit more. We had a few more members of staff then. So in that human season, there was just me and Axel. So there was 2 of us trying to do everything. Whereas then it started. There was 4 or 5 of us. I think there's 5 of them in the department now, which is really good in terms of they've managed to build that up. But yeah, it's relentless, and it's got to be, because it's elite sport. And you don't get to the Premier League and don't get jobs in the Premier League without having that trade-off of having to work unbelievably hard. I got better at it in terms of trying not to bring work home with me. Um, but again, so my trade-off for that was I was in at my desk every morning at 6:30, working at 6:30 in the morning. I quite liked that. I loved that hour. So I had probably between 6:30 to 7:30, 8 on my own, and it was unbelievable. Like that hour and a bit was my most productive hour of the day, because there was no one else there, no coach saying, "Oh, can you just?"
Yeah.
I was just being able to get through so much stuff. So I was like, yeah, I know I'm working unbelievably hard, but that was just me. I was up early, and I loved that hour to be really productive. But that was the trade off in terms of it was that, or a lot of people will take work home with them,
Yeah.
and that's what I used to do. And in that Houghton year, it just seemed like I was getting in at 6:30 and still taking work home with me. It was just relentless. But that year, I was doing I was doing pretty much all the opposition and all the post match and all that stuff. So yeah, like you say, there's a trade off, and you can't work in that elite environment without putting everything into it. And I think, like you said, in terms of the work-life balance, it will take its toll on it. Some people it doesn't. Some people can just absolutely fly through it, and look, they've given so much to that role and that job for 20, 30 years that it's just second nature. I think some of a lot of the coaches are used to it because a lot of them have been players since they were 16. A lot of them are ex-players, so it's like that's all they've ever known from when they were 16 as a YT, all the way up to now in their sort of late 30s, 40s, 50s. It's like that's been their career, that's been their life for their whole year. Whereas some of the support staff, it's like we've not come from that background. We've come from being at like going to school, being at university, sort of seeing people and everything like that. It's like we have a life outside of football. And yeah, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to step away a little bit in terms of just getting a little bit of that work life, or actually getting a work life balance. Being able to see people and see a lot more of my family, see a lot more of my friends. I say while still being within the industry a little bit in terms of actually helping the next generation of analysts, still sort of being in touch with these people and people within the role. So not totally stepping away from it. I know some people have just totally gone to do something completely different. At the minute it was just I needed a bit of a change.
Yeah. So it was a somewhat recent one I did with, you may know Craig from, is it Skill Corner? Obviously he did.
That's all, Craig, yeah.
Yeah, so he was the same as you. He was in the industry, and then he just kind of got to a point where it was a little bit, his priorities may have changed, and he stepped away. And he obviously you kind of stepped into. I think from what he told me, like he didn't really have a job to go into at that point. Like obviously he's back in the industry somewhat now, but he wasn't when he left. You've kind of moved on. So when you did that move, Tom, because it's almost like you've worked. And I said the same question. I asked the same question to Craig. Like you worked so hard to get to where you were. You've got loads of people that would be like, man, I'd love to have your job, Tom. Like, obviously they don't know what it entails, but was that going through your mind of like, what if I leave and I just, I'm kind of giving up something good here? Did you have, I'm sure a lot of thought went into the decision.
Yeah, I think anyone that leaves any profession that they've been in a while to something completely new, it's a risk. And there's always going to be that risk, but sometimes you just got to jump and you just got to go take it. Realistically, I could have worked in football for another 2, 3, 4 years, but that opportunity came up, and it felt like, especially because I knew John and Mike really well, had a really good relationship with them. I was like, that equally, I don't know when this job opportunity could come up again. So I could have stayed in football for another 3, 4. I could still be working in now. It wasn't like I was desperate and I need to get out. I had been thinking about it, and a lot of it, I was like, I knew I wouldn't stay in football forever. But then equally now, I've always said that I'll never say never to coming back. So it's one of them. If the right opportunity or someone said, look, we've got this opportunity, and if it's right and if it works, then absolutely. Like I'm not closing the door completely on it, because I loved it. Like and I really did love it. But like you say, like a bit like Craig, different stage in my life now. Sort of recently got married, hopefully wanting to sort of start a family and things like that. And like I've said to a lot of people, like somehow we managed to find that I think 5 out of 6 seasons we were away on Boxing Day.
Yeah.
Because it used to work where it was like you'd be home 1 year away, but then the year we were supposed to be at home, we got promoted. So then we were away first season in the Premier League, and then away the second, and it was just like I was like hotels and Christmas Day and things like that, and I was like, it's fine now, like it's not too bad, but like in the future, I've always been a planner in terms of thinking of the future a little bit, and I was like, when I've got a family, I was like, I don't really want to be leaving them on. And like some people do, and some people can, but I know for me, I was like, no, that's not for me. And I still get the same buzz in terms of helping people at Worcester. So in terms of one of my big philosophy things was I want to help improve people and help people get better at things.
Yeah.
So in terms of as an analyst, that was coaches, that was players. I want to help them become a better player, become a better coach, learn more information. That's still exactly the same now. I'm at University of Worcester, but you change player and coach to student.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. I want to see them come in from the first day that I teach them to the last day that I teach them, and see the growth and see, right, now you're ready to go out and get a job and wherever you want to get. It might not be analysis, it might be in coaching, it might be in sports science, it might be I don't really care wherever it is. Ideally I want it to be analysis, but I just love seeing you get better and help me be helping you on that journey. So it still gives me that same buzz in terms of the football gave me. So I don't feel like I've lost anything in terms of that. But yeah, it was I have to say I'm just loving the new role now.
Yeah, nice. Because you were doing some, from what I could tell, you were doing some part-time lecturing before you dove into full-time, weren't you? So like I say, you kind of almost probably knew what to expect. It wasn't like that. But I think it's really good that the people that are doing the masters now on the course, they're getting taught by yourself. Like it's kind of good to see. If I'm a student now wanting to be an analyst, getting taught by you, I know that you know what you're talking. Like, you know, you've been in that role, you've done it, you've actually lived it. So I can then ask you more questions around, you know, what's it like on a day to day? What's it like because you've actually done it. So yeah, I think that's really important for the students to learn from you in that regard.
Yeah, that's something that I think me, Mike, and John were are really good. We complement each other really. So John Francis got his PhD. In terms of the research and the research side of it, amazing. Still does the applied still works for the para football teams at the FA, wheelchair basketball before that. Like, so again, been an applied, but he's amazing in terms of his research and his theory. Mike, again, applied analyst, was a head of academy analysis at Wolves for 5 years in terms of worked at City, worked at West Ham, worked at Palace. So we always say, like, it's got to be applied. That's why our master's is applied sports performance analysis, because again, it's all right knowing the theory and theory side of it, and it's really important to know the theory, but also match it up with going and doing the job and being able to actually go and do the job in real life. So I think we've got a really nice balance in between sort of that theory side and that applied side that you need for that master's and the undergrad level.
Yeah. So you mentioned like the setup of the intensive week, and then it's kind of conducive to people working in clubs, you know, so they can obviously be based in a club and work. Is everyone on there working in it? Because one question I wanted to ask Tom was like, what's the mix of people? Are they all from kind of typical sports background, so like a sports degree, or is because a lot of people now are seeing or wanting to get into the analysis and they come from engineering, economics, like because of the data side of things. Do you get many people from that side?
Yeah, we've got a few guys that are working as data analysts. So again, because we've got to move with the times, so we've got a few now that are sort of data analysts. We've got some recruitment analyst guys at Southampton and Bristol City. We've got some performance analysis, but not just all in football. We've got a few guys. We've got someone at Cov Rugby. We've had a few guys in cricket as well. So it tends to mainly be football because that's where the market is. That's where the jobs are at. And everything like that. But no, we've got academy analysts, we've got first team analysts, like say recruitment, data analysts. We are finding a few more that are coming from that data side of it, which is great. And again, that fits itself to John's expertise in terms of the data side is a lot better than mine. In terms of, so a lot of that data side just goes out. I'll openly admit I'm not great on that because I come from that sort of coaching background. It's more that's more the side that I'll come back from. But it's really nice to see that we've got a nice variety of students and we'll give them these sort of technical skills and we'll give them everything that they can. It was like, well, you don't have to do everything. Just do the areas that really resonate with you and your development and how you want to develop. So if you want to develop in your scripting on sports code or something like that, then go and do that. If you want to do your data, then go use Tableau and use RStudio. And so we're giving them all of this information, like all of these resources and information, and then sort of going, right, choose your path. Like choose what you want to develop and how you want to, his presentation skills or something like that. In one of our modules, it's right, show us how you've developed from build a portfolio of your work. Right, this is where you started, this is where you finished, and you don't have to do everything, but just make it really relevant to you and your role that you're doing at the minute.
I think one thing from like, I think with universities, whether it be undergrad and obviously master's degrees, it's probably quite hard for them to, you mentioned kind of keeping up with the times, like the industry changes a lot. Like I think it's good that you obviously I'm sure you're still in contact with analysts that you know. So in terms of like keeping relevant and making sure the course isn't falling behind what's actually happening in the industry, because that's obviously the main focus, I would say.
Yeah, that's the good thing about having these working relationships with the clubs that our interns are in at. So we can go and see them in the club. So we've got all these contacts that have all the head of academy analysis and the head of departments at all these different. We've got so many different clubs on the books in terms of. I say that there's too many that I can't reel them all off, but it means that we're constantly in contact with them. It's like, okay, well, what your process? We ask the students, right, what process? What are you actually doing? What process are you doing at the minute? So we're constantly in contact with guys that are in the field.
Yeah.
And like say, this is the 7th year the course is running. So, okay, we've got the 40, I think 46 students or something like that on the course this year. The 50 we had last year are now going into jobs. The 40, 50 the year before. So now we're starting to get like hundreds and hundreds of ex-students that are all out there and at clubs. So it's like you build this sort of relationship with these clubs and everything like that, where you can constantly sort of ring people and go, right, can we come in for a visit and just check how things are going and ask these questions? I know Mike used to do that, come in with, he's a big Nottingham Forest fan, so he used to come and see me. I was wondering why he's coming to see me a lot more and go to games. But yeah, and we just have a chat and say, right, this is what we're doing now. So it's constantly making sure that actually what we're delivering is up to date and relevant for what's out there. Because like you say, it changes so quickly now. It's like, what's the point of teaching things that people aren't doing anymore, or teaching analysis how it used to be, and just sort of data collection, where I think it's moving away from that side of it now.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect. So nearly there. I know we've gone out most of your time, but there's a few more points really real quick if we can, Tom. So obviously we mentioned lots of advice throughout the conversation in terms of like being proactive, putting yourself out there, kind of taking in your surroundings and stuff. Like one thing I do get asked a lot about is kind of networking and kind of building your network up. So I wanted to firstly ask, were you much of a networker? Were you good at, was that something that you were good at, did you think? And also then just advice for people that are wanting to better build a network up and kind of go about approaching people, excuse me, that they might not know and trying to, make those connections.
Yeah, I don't know if I was amazing at networking. I just like conversation with people. I just sort of be really relaxed and I think building relationships. I spoke quite a lot about that as well in terms of being able to build relationships, a lot of applied work, sort of Denise Martin's on a paper back in 2001, where in terms of applied like skills of the applied analysis, and one of the 5 areas of expertise was in terms of establishing and building relationships. And so it's out there in the research and everything like that. It's so important to be able to build relationships in terms of everything that we're doing. Things I've said about affecting behaviours, that doesn't work if you don't have a good relationship with a coach or with a player. It's the same with networking. It's just building those good relationships and just going, well, okay, and just having conversations pre-game. So, what are you doing? What's your side like? And just little bits like how things going. And I wouldn't always go, oh, what's your number? Like, can I get your email? It was a lot more. Try to be a lot more natural with it, of just sort of in little things. Like I think at times, and I don't know, sometimes I don't know why analysts and clubs are like this. They'll make it as difficult as possible for the opposition team when they get there, and it's like, what's the point? Like, and just when you get opposition teams, being really helpful and go, right, if you need anything, let me know. There's power there. The thing we can give you this. Like, do you want simple stuff? Do you want a cup of tea? Do you want it? Like, it's not hard. Or I always used to think that. I always think, it's not hard to be a decent person. Then the more and more people I met, I was like, actually, maybe it is. Like, like strangely. And like saying, just helping people and not making things difficult for them. Because again, it goes a long way. You might not think it, but then the next time someone goes, oh, we were at Forest the other weekend. Oh, yeah, they're class with us. Yeah, they're Tom and Ramsey and Axel. They're really good. They're really helpful. Like, they point you where you want to go and anything. Little thing, because people talk, because everyone talks. It's a real small world in football in terms of the networking. So you start annoying a few people, and word soon gets round. Like in terms of that, so it was just sort of So in terms of the networking, I probably didn't go and wasn't spamming people and going, oh, like what you do. Like I'm just like just try and naturally build a relationship and build a rapport with people. I think and just sort of don't make things difficult for them. Just help you all in the same boat, help each other out. Really.
Yeah, I felt that as well. Like in terms of like some analysts, I think it maybe comes from like their colleagues as well, like the club in general, but like secrecy and like trying not to be helpful. Like at the end of the day, like all analysts to me should stick, like they're all in the same role, like they're all should be helping each other and stuff like that. So, and a lot of people do, but there are some that are like, not that.
Yeah.
So
Everyone thinks they've got the secrets, but everyone's really pretty much everyone's doing the same thing. Like they'll do it slightly differently, but pretty much everyone's doing the same thing. Like, but everyone thinks they've got the secret and they can't get out there and everything like that. It's like we're all doing virtually the same thing, just with slight differences. So
100%, definitely. So one thing I always ask everyone, Tom, that comes on, I don't know if you are a reader or not, but do you have any recommendations for any books? It doesn't have to be sports analysis. It could be anything, whether it be a book, podcast, anything you want to give a shout out to.
I've just finished reading. I went on a honeymoon, and I always used to try and buy a book in the airport just to keep me going. But what the recent one I read was about sort of dopamine and pleasure and pain. I just like reading things a bit outside, which was good. But probably my two favourites are Legacy, about from the All Blacks in terms of 15. Sort of 15 points in terms of leadership, and it's mainly about leadership, but there's so many good little snippets and life lessons and things to sort of take from that, which I loved. I've read a couple of times. And then 11 Rings by Phil Jackson in terms of
I've not read that yet, but that's been mentioned a few times.
And again, I like in terms of especially with Legacy in the All Blacks and Phil Jackson in terms of the Chicago Bulls and LA Lakers, it's just winners. And it's almost like studying winners and that sort of winning mentality and creating environments. I think Phil Jackson was big on sort of creating an environment, and I think that's really important for analysts in terms of how can I create an environment for learning. Because that's what we want to do. We want to sort of help players learn new information and everything like that. So it's like, okay, well, how can we create these environments where people learn and develop and win? Legacy and 11 Rings, I would say.
Nice. I will link them down below. So that's everything that I wanted to ask you, Tom. So anything else you want to say before we wrap it up? Or
no, just thanks for having me and thanks for letting me waffle on for for a bit. It's been great, but thank you very much, mate.
Nice. Appreciate your time, Tom. You take care and I'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you, Chris.